welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk with me on this Tuesday night, doing another episode right after the college football playoff rankings reveal. We're going to start with that. We're going to talk about Georgia's big win over Mississippi State over the weekend. We're going to talk about Georgia, Texas. Number 5, Georgia getting ready to host number 10, Texas, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Saturday night. We're going to get into what Kirby Smart and players had to say about that matchup. Get ready for what will be a fun one in Athens on Saturday night. We will also dive into some coaching carousel check-in. No changes over the weekend, but just see how our picks are looking so far, and then we'll end it with a little Georgia basketball. But guys, let's talk about why we are recording this a little bit later than we usually do. Second college football playoff rankings revealed. Nothing too wild when you look at the second edition of the rankings. I'll just start from number 1 and work our way up. Ohio State number 1, Indiana number 2, Texas A&M number 3, Alabama number 4, Georgia number 5. No changes between that top 5. First change at Texas Tech at number 6 that moved up 2 spots. You got Ole Miss number 7, Oregon 8, Notre Dame 9, Texas 10, and Texas is the cutoff as far as the playoff teams. Among the top teams, the matchups you would see if the playoffs started tomorrow. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Alabama have the first round byes. And then the first round matchups, you would have number 5, Georgia hosting number 12, South Florida. South Florida is the highest rated of the group of 5 teams. You got number 8, Oregon hosting number 9, Notre Dame. Number 6, Texas Tech hosting number 11, Miami. And number 7, Ole Miss hosting number 10, Texas. So, Ben, I'll start with you. Any big thoughts, any major takeaways from the second edition of the rankings? Anything you want to jump into?
I mean, working my way all the way back from 25. I mean, there's some things that are interesting, nothing super groundbreaking or surprising necessarily, but, USF breaking into the top 25 as that top-ranked G5 team. I think there were questions about after Tulane beat Memphis, who is that going to be, and would they even be in the top 25? USF is. I think they are going to feel pretty safe in that spot the rest of the year as well. So that was big. I mean, Cincinnati getting ranked. The committee likes the Big 12, man. The committee wants, I think they respect the Big 12. And if you're thinking about the SEC and the Big 10 as the top 2 conferences, as I think most of college football world does, I mean, the Big 12 has clearly fit itself in as the third conference in the minds of the committee this go around. Iowa doesn't suffer much from its loss to Oregon, which I find not wrong, but just interesting, dropping 1 spot right now. They clearly respect what that loss was, and you can tell that certain losses matter more to the committee than others. What they're doing with the ACC is probably the most confusing thing. Like, Miami's win against Notre Dame doesn't matter to the committee, clearly, against two two-loss teams. But Miami's loss to Louisville with 2 two-loss teams in the same conference also doesn't seem to matter. But Virginia's win over Louisville does seem to matter. It's just an interesting how they've decided that certain head-to-heads have mattered to them versus other head-to-heads not. But what this has resulted in is Miami jumping Georgia Tech while Georgia Tech was on a bye week. I mean, we would be looking at these 12-team playoff projections, these graphics. They'd all have Georgia Tech in it if Georgia Tech just stayed status quo ahead of Miami where it was a week ago. So I'm sort of surprised that didn't happen. And I also just think for fun, that's not why the committee does this, but for fun, I think they missed some opportunities with what they could have done with the bracket. I mean, if they had Ole Miss still at 6 and Texas Tech at 7, they would have a Texas Texas first round matchup showing up on the bracket right now. That would be fun just for the graphic. And then they could have jumped Texas A&M over Indiana from 3 to 2, and you'd have that whole little section of the bracket where Texas plays Texas Tech with the winner Texas plays Texas Tech with the winner playing Texas A&M. Again, I know that's not why we do it. This is all fictional. This entire bracket that we see for the next 4 weeks is all fictional. So if we're playing in this fun fictional world, why not just make a decision that nobody would have had any gripes with? If Texas Tech was still at 7 and Ole Miss stayed at 6, nobody would have had any issue with that. If Texas A&M had jumped Indiana to number 2, I don't think anybody would have had any issue with that. No, it just would have been fun for the graphic. So why not?
Think about what the clicks would have looked like had they
That's what
just
matters
gave
here,
us
and
that.
that's why we call football nowadays, right, guys?
Yeah, 100%. Wanted to go through just the top 25 as far as biggest movers and the teams that fell the furthest. Miami actually moved the furthest up. They gained 3 spots up to number 15. Michigan moved up 3 spots up to number 18. Biggest losers, Louisville, Virginia both dropped 5 spots, as well as BYU, which fell to number 12 after losing to Texas Tech. Kip, any big takeaways from this second edition of the rankings?
This seems like the year where the argument to kick out the group of five is at its strongest. It does not look like they should have a team in this college football playoff. I mean, they don't have probably one of the top 15 teams at the end of the day. I am glad that they gave it to South Florida over James Madison because James Madison plays a pure Charmin soft schedule. So I think that was the right move there. If you're SF, you feel pretty good, but they got spanked by Navy last year at home. So I think that's the game this weekend where if you're the Bulls, you're like you win this one, you feel really good about your chances of getting in. And I think in the end, if you're Georgia, you're kind of looking like, do they make it to Atlanta? Do they get in that large bid? This is a pretty strong spot to be in right now. Getting USF would seem like on paper to be, the by far the best first round draw. Now I'll say that Aaron Brown's playing some ridiculous football as of late, and I'm sure Kirby Smart's already telling you, like, I'm already worried about him. He's, I don't want to think about having to play a guy like that because he's the kind of guy that could really, make you look foolish on defense. But I think that looking ahead seems like it would be a strong first round draw, for Georgia to host USF in the first round. I still think Iowa gets too much love as a 3-loss team where they're ranked. Not that it really matters, but in the overall sense of things, I think they're being propped up too high, which then props up everybody else that plays them and has them on the schedule. Back to the G5, I think it's just unfortunate. Like they're going to steal a spot where, like, Oklahoma or Vanderbilt, like they have a strong argument that they're one of the top 12 teams in the country, one of the best 12 teams in the country, and they're on the outside looking in at this point because of that. So, also agree with Ben. I thought Georgia Tech would be the highest ranked ACC team. I think that's kind of a little bit of a surprise there because I had already kind of projected them into my playoff rankings article and had to go back in and kind of ghost edit that one because I just thought they would be the team that would make it. Now, again, as been pointed out, these fictional rankings don't really matter right now, but we're all, we're trying to make a living talking about this stuff. So let's not think about this too hard. Let's go ahead and say I think overall they got it right, but there's some wrinkles here and there where I'd still like to know what they were thinking in the room.
I have to imagine Miami's win over Notre Dame is really propping them up and has really helped them as far as the conversation with Georgia Tech. That's the only thing I can kind of understand there. I
Well, and
wanted to
I
get
think
you.
last week my bigger issue was where they had it set up last week, like Miami being 18 when Notre Dame was 10, and it really was the only head-to-head that they weren't respecting in the entire rankings was what made me say, what are you doing here? And so I think they've almost corrected that a little bit. I just think they've corrected it the wrong way because now they're punishing Louisville, who has the same record in the same conference with a head-to-head win against Miami, to almost try and correct the fact that Miami shouldn't have been that far behind Notre Dame. Well, it's like, really, they should have staggered them differently previous. It's not anything I need to get into, but last week they should have just staggered them differently, where it should have been Virginia, Louisville, Notre Dame, or Louisville, Miami, Notre Dame, staggered that way with those four because they played all those head-to-heads. It would have been very easy for them to do it. It's exactly how they did it with Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss, so there was no reason why they couldn't just do that with them as well, but can't change that now. Now the new rankings are going to take precedence for whatever happens next week.
So I know this is very dangerous to be looking ahead at what could play out, but that's kind of what happens when we're in the second week of these college football playoff rankings. I wanted y'all's thoughts. Specifically, I'm looking at Georgia and Texas Tech, and I want to give a shout out to Dog Nation's Connor Riley because we were talking about this today. He brought it up, and it's something that I'm fascinated by. What winds up happening between Georgia and Texas Tech if Georgia gets left out of the SEC title game, if Texas Tech wins out and wins the Big 12, guys, I think Texas Tech would jump Georgia. Now I understand we still got a ways to go before we get there, but I'll start with you, Kip. Do you think that's realistic? If Georgia wins out, does not make the SEC title game, Texas Tech wins out, which includes a Big 12 title, I think that Texas Tech would jump them, but do you?
Yeah, I think that this week's move kind of tells you that they really like Texas Tech. Moving up 2 spots at this point, they're poised to not even need to win the conference. They can make it as an at-large team right now. Like if you're the Big Ten, or especially if the SEC, you're worried about the fact that they can end up getting a first-round bye just by default at this point. I think just putting them ahead of Ole Miss kind of takes you. It tells you that they really like the Red Raiders right now, and I think whoever it is in that room that loves them has made a strong argument, because I think at this point it's like they are the darling of this committee, because I think the eye test and the schedule is a little bit misleading on this team, but they're the fun team to talk about this year. And I think this is just that situation where they're getting a lot of love. They're high in the rankings, and I think they possibly don't even have to worry about winning their conference at this point. So they're just in a really great spot right now. Not that Georgia isn't, but if Georgia doesn't get to Atlanta and Texas Tech doesn't win their conference, I think both teams are just in really good spots to have high spots in the college football playoff.
Ben, what do you think about that hypothetical? If Georgia wins out, if Texas Tech wins out, but Georgia doesn't make it to Atlanta, how do you think that plays out?
I hadn't really thought about it because I'd heard people talking about like the positives of like, if certain things play out with other games the rest of this season, one of those top 4 teams makes it to there but loses and it's their second loss of the season. Would Georgia potentially jump over them even with a loss? Like, could that possibly happen? I hadn't really thought about it from the standpoint of, could Georgia drop to 6 because someone else leapfrogged them championship weekend? I absolutely think that could happen, especially if it's a BYU rematch and they do to them again what they did this most recent time, because that's going to be a win that the committee right now has as the number 11, 12 team in the country. So it's a respected win in the committee's eyes if they end up doing that championship weekend. So yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but that probably would drop Georgia into the 6-11 versus the 3 line.
Fascinated to see how it plays out. And I'd be quick to point this out too. I've been on a couple radio hits and people have been like, what do you think about it being an advantage that Georgia might not play in the SEC title game? And I said, guys, we had the same conversation last year, and not only did that not matter, but Georgia wound up being the first of the 2 SEC teams to clinch a spot in Atlanta. So just don't write it off, because we might be sitting here thinking there's no way, and then something wild happens. All right, wanted to turn our attention back to Week 11, Georgia's 41-21 victory over Mississippi State in Starkville. You guys did such a great job recapping that game, but I wanted to revisit it and talk a little bit about that game. And I'll start, since I wasn't on Saturday's podcast. You guys hit on the biggest stuff. The best news coming out of it, especially a couple days removed, seems like everything's good with Lawson Lucky. We don't know for sure yet if he'll be available for Texas, but I think that he's in a good situation, and it's not as bad as it looked, because guys, being there live, it was very scary, that hit he took. So we'll see if he is able to go, but we're gonna look and see what he's able to do. Looking elsewhere, I thought Gunnar Stockton played super well. Continues to get better, and I think that's just been the name of his game in the last few weeks. He's just been very consistent. Huge shout out to Nate Frazier, but also, as Nate talked about in his post game, man, that offensive line, I think that was their best game, and the fact that they've been able to get those guys healthy and get those guys, the starting 5 that they want. All those guys out there, I think they played fantastic. Kirby deserves a lot of credit, as well as the entire coaching staff, for maximizing the middle 8. The fact they were able to get a stop, that turnover on downs by Mississippi State, go down and score with the Zach Branch touchdown throw, and then come out in the start of the third quarter. Nate Frazier breaks off a long run, and basically once he scored, the game was over. So to dominate the middle 8, sometimes we kind of poke fun at Kirby. His 2-minute drill work, kind of hit or miss, but I mean, they played that nearly to perfection. Um, Elsewhere, I thought Raylan Wilson had a fantastic game. CJ Allen continues to be consistent. KJ Bolden, man, I looked up and then was like, wow, KJ Bolden had 10 tackles. Great game. Kind of goes to what Kirby said after the game. They basically are just conceding this opening drive against their opponents. They're going to score. But I swear, this was the conversation 2 years ago. It kept happening, but that was a really good defense. I think this is a solid defense. I think that they did a good job of sort of squashing Mississippi State's early momentum, taking care of business. And man, I was thrilled to not be frantically writing a story to post at the buzzer. It had been a little while, so that was nice to see that. I'll throw it to you, Kip. Anything that stuck with you from that game on Saturday? Anything top of mind from a big win for Georgia?
I think the narrative right now has changed with regarding Stacey Searles and the job he's done with the offensive line. And I think last season and the offseason, it was like, how does Georgia's offensive line play so terribly when they had their entire offensive line were all starting in the NFL? They're all high draft picks. And we pointed out, well, they were banged up. And then this year, they started the season banged up. But now they're as healthy as they've been. And to go along with that, I think Stacey Searles has done a better job this year of getting other guys in there, getting other guys prepared. Was it because he had no other choice? Sure. But still, you threw in true freshmen in there into the mix. You rotated some other guys in there at offensive tackle to kind of get you, to bridge you to win. You got your starters back. And now you have depth. Now you have multiple guys you can depend on. You can rotate guys in like you did a couple seasons ago, and it doesn't look like a different blocking unit out there. And goodness, I just think that the difference with Monroe Freeling and Ernest Green out there, healthy, is night and day. You're able to do whatever you want in the playbook, and it has a trickle down effect. Like I said in my the things I learned, like the tight ends are able to actually run some routes and receive targets from Gunner. Gunner is actually able to trust his protection and look downfield more often. And so I think it really just opens up the entire playbook and allows you to for Bobo to just kind of do the things that he likes to do offensively, whether it's 12 personnel, whether it's, just bringing guys on the end around, whether it's utilizing the screen and rollouts. I think he was going deep into his bag and had a strong game, and it's still on the rewatch. You just have to laugh when you just see the Nate Frazier explosive, and then somehow Gunnar Stockton's right there in the end zone. And it's like, how's your quarterback, the guy that's basically meet him in the end zone? I just found that hilarious. It's just another part of where the offense seems to be clicking at the right time of the year.
Yeah, it's hard to ask for any more, especially from your quarterback. That was such a cool visual there. I wanted to mention too, I think I got that update to you guys during the post-game show about Drew Bobo had the laceration on his hand. Based on everything I've heard, I think he's fine. He'll be able to go this week, which is huge because, this Texas front, man, it is nasty and it is stout. Ben, what are your thoughts? What has stuck with you from that big win in Starkville?
Run for 303 yards. You're going to beat a lot of teams. I don't know that that's sustainable with what Georgia has defensively ahead of it in certain parts of its schedule and what would be beyond the regular season schedule. But I could not agree with Kipp more when you bring up, like, everyone was so loud this offseason about Stacey Searles and the run game. And like, sometimes you just, like, people got to hand up, be like, you got to be wrong on this one. Like, there's nothing that you can really say about this offensive line that would be a negative. I mean, you have guys that are performing better this season than they did a season ago. You lost 4 guys to the NFL draft, and you're performing now better than you were a year ago. You have 2 true freshmen that have proven that they're ready to play right away in SEC play, and they've been really productive for you. So when it comes to, like, any box that you typically need to check as an offensive line coach to prove what you have done, I mean, he has far exceeded those expectations this season. And I just think it's necessary to say that because of how loud the conversation was on the other side of it. I mean, even times I would sometimes in the offseason just flippantly throw out like, if Stacy or Bobo don't have great seasons, like you don't know what it's going to look like the next season. Like that was just sort of offhanded comments that people would naturally make in the offseason. And I understand why it got to that point, but when you're rushing for 303 yards in SEC play, when your offensive line unit is the furthest thing from your problems that you have on this football team right now. And I know the people that are out there, the trolls, are going to sit there and they're going to, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever it is, something's going to go wrong and they're going to rush for 65 yards because it's football and things happen sometimes. And all of a sudden they're going to point and say, see, I told you so. And I get that too. And that's just, part of this fun little game that we play. But yeah, you run for 303 yards. That's going to be my takeaway. And I think getting 180 of it out of Nate Frazier, who also has had his fair share of, obstacles throughout the course of the season and questioning of what his role should be throughout the course of the season. I just think it was really important to hit that stride going into, 2 of these next 3 games that are really going to decide what the future of Georgia's season really can look like.
I'm glad you shouted out Stacy Searles, and I would own it too. That we talked about feeling like his group underwhelmed in 2024, and we had the question of him being back and if that was the right decision. And I mean, his group has come through, and I wanted to point out too. You talked about him getting guys to play better. I mean, think about Monroe Freeling toward the end of last year. I mean, he struggled in that Sugar Bowl, and he's been fantastic. I thought he had a strong case to be SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. Didn't get it this week, but, man, he was fantastic. Shout out getting Zayden Walker in there. I think Zayden's a guy that's up and coming and a guy that's going to cause trouble. Good kind of trouble for this defense. Good to see him, and fascinated to see getting more of those young guys in the mix. I did want to ask you, Ben. They did not win the turnover battle. It was an even split. Were you upset about that?
Well, the way I chalked it up was they didn't win the turnover battle. Like it was 1-1 technically. I feel like if you fumble when you're like 3 yards into the end, like about to score, and then they turn it over right after and you only need 27 yards to score a touchdown, like I feel like Georgia won the turnover battle in that respect, where it's like their turnover didn't really cost anything other than just having to score a few plays later than they otherwise would have from the 3-yard line. So We'll chalk it up as a minor win for Georgia in the turnover battle that they split 1-1.
I got to be honest. I thought what you were going to say was, well, they forced that turnover on downs, so really they won the turnover battle if you count that.
Yeah, well, and look, Georgia's done that a few times this season too. If you start counting some of those, like they have a case to be made. And Kirby loves to throw out the stats that we keep or the stats that we do. I wouldn't be shocked if they have a slightly different statistic in terms of how they determine turnovers or something like that.
We're going to take a quick break, come back and talk Georgia, Texas, Kirby Smart players, what they've said about the Longhorns getting ready for Saturday night. Talk about the coaching carousel, just to check in on how some of our predictions are doing, the ones we feel good about and the ones we'd probably like to do over. And then we'll end things with a little Georgia basketball. So we'll take a quick break. Be right back. As we mentioned earlier, Georgia getting ready for a big-time game between the hedges, getting ready for Texas to come to town on Saturday night. On Thursday afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have on Horns 24/7's Eric Henry to help us preview this game, learn a lot more about Texas, figure out what we will see when the Longhorns come to the Classic City. But I want to start with some of the clips of Kirby Smart and some of the players speaking on Monday and Tuesday as they get ready for the top 15 matchup. I want to start, obviously, a lot of the conversation around Texas is around Arch Manning, the one-time Georgia target, who is getting ready for his first trip with the Longhorns to Athens. Wanted to start with Kirby talking about the progress he's seen in recent weeks with Arch Manning, what's sort of standing out, how he's been able to play better. This is what Kirby had to say.
confidence. I think they're number one. He's getting better protection. He's seeing things well. He's making good decisions. He's getting the ball out of his hand quickly. I mean, he's maturing. You know, he's had an opportunity to play and grow, and you don't really get that until you get out there and play. He played a good bit last year, but the kind of games he's had to play in this year, just a different stature in terms of the SEC gauntlet. And just, you know, you watch game by game. I watched yesterday each game throughout the year and watched him just grow and play better. He's extending plays. He's doing really well with scrambles. Keeps his eyes downfield. Doesn't look at the rush. He's made some really impressive wow throws, and they're playing better offensively.
Kind of leave this as a broad question, and I'll start with you, Ben. Just what do you make of Arch Manning coming into this game and just the threat he poses as part of this Texas offense?
Well, the Arch Manning, we've talked about the Arch Manning pendulum and what was going to happen, and I think that it's played out almost exactly that way, where coming into the season, he was pitched as Heisman frontrunner. This guy is going to be the face of college football, which, you know, I guess in some respects he has been, even with his play not being 100% up to par all the time. But then after losing a couple of games early, I think it swung completely in the other direction. And it was as if this guy was an incompetent quarterback that wasn't going to be able to win games in the SEC. And he's clearly gotten better and more comfortable as the season has gone on. He's not getting great protection up front. They're not a great offense in general outside of Ryan Wingo's playmaking ability, which I do think makes them, you know, threatening to anyone if they can get a couple of big plays there. But I feel like the Arch Manning pendulum has finally started to make its way back to the middle a little bit, and everyone has a relatively realistic viewpoint on him that he is still a young quarterback. He still is fresh. He is getting better week to week. He can make some, like Kirby Smart said, he can make some wow plays when he moves with his legs and throws it. I think one of the best characteristics of their offense really is when their dropbacks break down, his ability to scramble. That's where they have some of their most effective offensive plays is with Arch Manning with his legs, but not on designed runs. You would think with the way he runs, they might design more. They don't design a ton, and they're not hugely successful with it when they do. But when he's scrambling on broken down pass plays, he is pretty effective. And so I think the key for Georgia in this one is you don't let Ryan Wingo beat you, and you don't let Arch Manning scramble for first downs more than you would be comfortable with, which we know there's going to be a few here and there. But yeah, I think Arch Manning's still a solid quarterback. And I think that everyone viewed him as, is this guy going to go 1-1 in the draft? And he was looking at this year as, how can I get better so that I can be the best version of myself next season when he's the starting quarterback at Texas, which he's going to be.
Before we continue the Arch conversation, you brought up his ability to keep plays alive, his athleticism, and his ability to run. I wanted to play another clip of Kirby talking about the dangers of rushing a quarterback like Arch Manning and the problems you can have if it doesn't, if you don't follow through. Here's what Kirby said.
Yeah, it's a challenge every play. There's 6 gaps, sometimes 7 gaps up there you got to fill, and you can't fill them all. So you got to rush intelligently and violently, and those two don't always mix. So it's hard to do that and contain the quarterback. We've had some opportunities to get sacks that we've capitalized on. We had a couple chances on normal down stuff the last week with Mississippi State's style of play. But it'll be key this week for sure because Arch is really good. They're really good at protection. They know what they're doing. They've got different protections, and it's a challenge every week for our defense to try to affect the quarterback.
So going back to the Arch conversation, Kipp, just what are your thoughts on where he is and what he's going to be up against playing on the road and playing was still a pretty stout defense in Georgia?
I mean, isn't it shocking how getting reps can help you improve as a quarterback, as a first-year starter? And maybe that should have been the emphasis of an offseason instead of anointing anyone or saying that whether or not someone can play. You just say, let's see what they do. Let's see what happens after 4 or 5 games. And yeah, I mean, we saw week 1. It's like, you're playing Ohio State. Welcome to being a starter in college football. Like, he got the the most difficult test you can get, other than, I don't know, maybe starting in the college football playoff. Like both quarterbacks in this game have an interesting just storyline of their path to being a starter and gaining experience. Yeah, he's playing better. And Texas realized, like, yeah, this is what happens when you go back to having a lot of guys drafted. I remember when they went, like, they didn't even have guys going in the draft, and credit to Sarkisian. He's increased the talent level, as Kirby said. But yeah, when you have 14 guys drafted, it's tough to replace that many guys. When you have 3 offensive linemen drafted, it's tough to replace 3 offensive linemen drafted, just like for Georgia, 4 defensive linemen as well. So you're having to adjust to that. And I think he's done a solid job as far as just improving as the season goes on, not playing timid. Again, both quarterbacks in this game, pretty similar there. At the same time, though, the road Arch Manning, which is what we're going to really be talking about in this matchup, road Texas, it's a little bit different than a road at home. Like taking the Ohio State game out, the Kentucky game, that was a struggle against a team that we saw is just not very good. Arch struggled in that game. You talk about the Florida game, not one of his best games either. Had a couple interceptions in that game. Even the Mississippi State game, which I guess is the game that's getting propped up for this one, is the improvement of Arch. That team isn't good. We just saw they're not a good football team. And his 346 passes are kind of buoyed by the fact that he threw 346 yards. He threw 46 passes in that game. You hope to have those kind of numbers when you're throwing over 40 times. I think that it kind of becomes the question mark. If Arch Manning throws 45, 46 times against Georgia, what kind of game does he have? It could be a long day, I think. I think that's where your offensive line gets tired. They start breaking down in protection. You start having some issues. So I think it's kind of he's playing better. They haven't exactly he hasn't had strong performances on the road, and he hasn't played the best teams on the road as of late. So I think Georgia's a better team than any of those 3 teams he's played recently. So it's tough to really know if this Arch Manning is better than the Arch Manning you saw earlier in the season.
I think it's a great point to talk about him on the road, because this is going to be a tough environment, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say tougher than Starkville and tougher than Lexington, 2 areas where he wasn't exactly, on fire, especially the entire Texas offense. That Mississippi State game, they really needed that punt return by Niblett to come back and make that a game. The thing, too, for me, one of the key matchups, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, when I have Eric on, is this Texas offensive line against the Georgia defensive line. That Georgia had 3 sacks against Mississippi State. That was a step in the right direction. But what can you do against Texas, who, even if their offensive line is shaky, I feel pretty confident saying they have more talent up front than what Mississippi State was rolling with. So what can you do there? Can you affect Arch? If you don't sack him at the very least, get him off his mark, make him uncomfortable. If you can do that, I think it'll go a long way into being able to win the game. Sticking with the Texas offense, we're going to play just a quick clip of Kirby Smart talking about Steve Sarkisian. Kirby talks like they have grown really close in recent years. I think they're 2 guys that kind of are in similar positions, the faces of 2 major programs in college football. He talked about after the Mississippi State game that they had been texting a little bit. Texas was on bye while Georgia was getting ready for Mississippi State. But Kirby was asked, what can you sort of expect? What are the characteristics of a Texas offense under Steve Sarkisian? This is what Kirby said.
Explosive, attacking, window dressing. They've got a lot of shifts, motions. They employ tempo, and they'll go fast on you, and they do a really good job of mixing things up and creating a lot to work on defensively.
So I'm just going to go out and just ask you guys point blank. I'll start with Kipp. Does the Georgia defense give up a touchdown on Texas's first drive on Saturday?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just that's the easy call there. And you know what? I don't think that's really an issue at this point. I just think that you go ahead, get it out of the way, and I mean, you get the scripted drive out of the way, and then you go to work. I think that's Georgia defense now. Is where you just their scripted play is probably something Georgia hasn't seen before. Again, Georgia's every team's Super Bowl at this point, so that's what happens. They develop a whole drive that they haven't put on film. And so it's just a different look that every team's trying to put out there against Georgia. It works, and then they have to go to the rest of their playbook, and Georgia knows those plays. So yeah, sure, I'll say that they score on the first drive, but then at that point the sun's set. Georgia's had some success offensively early, and I think after that, like, it'll get a little bit louder in Sanford Stadium on that second time the arch comes up the center.
All right, Ben, same question to you. Does Texas score on its first drive?
I'm going to say no. I just looked up Arch's stats in away games. He's 56% passing in away games. I feel like one of Georgia's biggest issues on these opening drives has just been efficiency from the quarterback position. I know that hasn't always been the case, but I feel like that has primarily been the case. I'm not saying that Arch Manning isn't capable of that, but I'm just going to take a chance and say, no, I think this is the week that Georgia gets right. But I think that what will happen is everyone will let their guard down and say, oh, Georgia got to stop on the first possession. Everything's fine. And I don't necessarily think that'll be the case. I think that Texas will find some success throughout the game. I'm just betting on it not happening on the opening drive.
I'm going to stick with Kipp and say that Texas does score on this opening drive, but then has 2 consecutive drives with no points. I just think it's kind of one of those things you look silly if you bet that, oh, this will change, because this has just sort of been this defense's MO. And frankly, we're kind of getting to the point where I'm afraid to see what it looks like when they don't get a stop. If they do get a stop to start the game, because maybe that happens, and what follows is not what we've gotten to see in recent weeks, where they've locked down and they played really good on defense. Wanted to shout out to this clip from Oscar Delp, because Kipp mentioned, that for a lot of teams playing Georgia is their Super Bowl. Oscar was asked about how his approach to games like this has changed. He's one of the veteran guys now, one of the older guys, compared to when he was a freshman, when he's kind of learning the ropes and getting ready for a big game like this. Thought Oscar's answer was really interesting. Here's what he said.
I mean, you got to approach every game the same in this league. Just playing at Georgia, you're going to get every team's best shot. I mean, don't matter who we're playing, we're the game of the year. So I think don't matter who we're playing, it's a big game, just because we're out there. So we've got the team, got the players. I think everyone understands like what the magnitude is of every game you play, especially one like this weekend. So we're super excited to get out there and play. Don't matter who we're playing. Everyone on our team approaches it the exact same throughout every day in practice and throughout the game. So.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Sounds like a veteran to me. He's been through these wars before, and he's getting ready for another big one that I think will be super entertaining on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he's really come into his own, and I think that he has a way, and I guess Zachariah Branch has this as well, but it's like when he gets the ball in space, it just feels like he's going to get more yards after the catch than it feels like he should when he makes the play, which is a little bit weird coming from like a big body tight end like that. But yeah, I think he's going to need to be big, especially if Lawson ends up not being available for a little while.
Yeah, we should have more on that front Wednesday night, so keep an eye out for the availability report. As I mentioned earlier, Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have on Horns 24/7's Eric Henry. I think that'll be a fun one. I hope you guys will either watch that one or listen to it once we have recorded it. All right, coaching carousel check-in. So no coaching changes since the last time we recorded, last time we did our check-in, but thought this was a good opportunity for all of us to look over the jobs, look over our picks, and really take this not so much as an opportunity for us to look at our own picks, but to sort of see each other's and see what we like and see what we don't like. I'll fly through these. If you are watching this live, you can see the graphic we have with all of our picks, but if you're listening to this, these are the picks of all three of us for various jobs. UCLA, I have Dave Aranda. Virginia Tech, I have Jeff Munkin. Oklahoma State, Colin Klein. Arkansas, Bobby Petrino. Penn State, Clark Lee. Oregon State, Brian Harsin. UAB, Bryant Vincent. Florida, Lane Kiffin. Colorado State, Jay Hill. LSU, Brent Key. Auburn, John Sumrall. All right, Kipp, UCLA, Jed Fish, Virginia Tech, Shane Beamer, Oklahoma State, Zach Robinson, Arkansas, John Sumrall, Penn State, Eli Drinkwitz, Oregon State, Ryan Grubb, UAB, Neil Brown, Florida, Fran Brown, Colorado State, Chris Kiffin, LSU, Lane Kiffin, and Auburn, Dabo Swinney. And then, let's see, actually, that was flipped. Ben had Dabo Swinney for the Auburn job. Flip those two, so I'll fix that later. So, Ben, UCLA, Dan Mullen, Virginia Tech, Billy Napier, Oklahoma State, Trey Lamb, Arkansas, Rhett Lashley, Penn State, Matt Rule, Oregon State, Nick Rolovich, UAB, Todd Hartley, Florida, Alex Golish, Colorado State, Brennan Marion, LSU, John Summerall, and Ben had Dabo Swinney for the Auburn job. So I'll start with you, Ben. Looking more so at my picks, at Kipp's picks. Any of those that you feel pretty good about at this point? Any of those that you think you feel pretty confident we might have missed the mark?
I mean, John Summerall, I think to Auburn right now is probably one of the better picks just across the board in terms of his name being immediately linked to that job, it feeling like a fit and it feeling like they're open to it. You know, I don't know. The LSU situation right now is turned into such chaos that I don't know if anybody would accurately be able to predict who they would want and who would want to be there right now. So all bets are off with the LSU job. Florida is going to go big game hunting more than Alex Golish, so I don't like my pick there on that front. But Lane Kiffin, it looks like it's either Ole Miss or Florida for him at this point, or NFL, which I did say from the beginning. I think that NFL gets into the picture more for Lane Kiffin if he makes the playoff at 11-1 than people probably think. But I think that Lane Kiffin and John Summerall are probably the two best picks right now based on where things are sitting. Clark Lee to Penn State too. Honestly, Jordan, across the board, I kind of like what you've done here. On Kipp's side, I hope, God willing, that Zach Robinson is going to be Oklahoma State's head coach. I think that would be an awesome pick. They should really hire him. I think that would be fantastic. What he's been able to do with the Falcons offense this season. They should definitely make that hire. Shane Beamer, I mean, that one gets more and more interesting by the week, I would say. The more South Carolina struggles and the more that you wonder, is he a guy that would want to get out of town before things got too ugly? I don't really know. But I do like that one right there. I don't like Fran Brown to Florida. I think Fran Brown's stock is going in the wrong direction right now. And I will say, had they beaten Vanderbilt, Kipp, I would have really liked DJ Durkin to Auburn pick. That not happening, I think hurts his chances a little bit.
Yeah, I'll talk about y'all's picks real quick if Maya does not unplug the wires to this podcast. Guys, you still got me?
Yep, we got you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Maya. So, Kipp
that's our producer. That's the show, our producer of our show, for everyone wondering.
Correct. All right, looking at Kipp and Ben's picks, I think the Shane Beamer one that Ben just highlighted, I would feel pretty good about that if I'm Kipp, just based on how things are going. Zach Robinson, maybe he might just have to be an analyst at Oklahoma State. He's not really trending well. And, if I'm another NFL team, I think I hire him because he seems to be the only guy that can stop Bijan Robinson. So that would be one worth pointing out. Elsewhere, the DJ Durkin one, I think that Vanderbilt loss probably crushed his chances. So the fact they gave up, 45, I don't know that speaks too well for him. Looking at some of these other jobs, I like the Nick Rolovich one for Ben. Alex Golish, I think, is sneaky a really good one for Florida. I'm at the point where I think Lane Kiffin just stays put because part of the conversation is going to be the fact that I think it's Ole Miss for Lane Kiffin because if they're part of the playoff, man, like he's not going to leave them in the middle of a playoff run. So I think he stays put, and I think Alex Golish really has a chance to wind up getting that Florida job. He already beat Florida. He can win in the swamp. We already saw that. So yeah, I think there's some pretty good hits between you all. The one I did want to point out too with Kipp, I think Eli Drinkwitz. I think his stock is going up on that Penn State job. I like that pick, and that's just a job I'm struggling to really have a feel for. It's like if I could do it over again, I think I would pick the Ohio State receivers coach Brian Hartline. But from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of juice there. That Eli Drinkwitz pick might wind up being a really savvy one by Kipp. All right, Kipp, what do you make of my picks and Ben's? Any of them that stand out?
Well, at this point, I think there's still a lot of chaos involved. I think with the Florida and LSU jobs, to where it's just tough. I think we're still in the early stages. So you gotta have to think about the more stable like picks. And I think again, Alex Golish, I think Ben's in a good spot there with him because I think his stock's not gonna. I don't see it wavering at this point. So I think he's gonna be in the mix for a Power Four job at this point. Similarly, like John Summerall, like I think he picked up and coming guys that they may end up getting flipped. But I think like if both of those guys, if Alex Golish ends up at LSU or John Summerall ends up at Florida, it's still like he should get partial credit because I just think like you could flip those and still kind of be right. And I feel a lot better about that than Lane Kiffin going anywhere. I think both of us are going to bust on Lane Kiffin picks because I just think he's watching what's happening at LSU and going, I don't want to be anywhere close to that mess right now. Are they even going to be able to bring someone in? They're putting themselves in a legal battle at this point over the coach that, fighting over a buyout right now. You should have figured that out before and known what was going to happen. So I just think that's toxic. Why would you want that if you're Lane right now? And so honestly, why would you want that if you're Brent Key? Like we're talking about Georgia Tech potentially getting the playoffs. So I just think that is just kind of throwing a monkey wrench into several projections. But overall, I think looking at we don't know where the Arkansas job is going to go. Like I think Bobby Petrino was a great Hail Mary pick. I love it still, just because I'm looking at the other candidates now and thinking, yeah, they've raised their stock above the Arkansas jobs. Like with Auburn, I think DJ Durkin didn't do great in his debut, but still, like the defense was still been the strength of this team going forward. And I don't know. I think for them, they're going to go through several candidates. I don't think he's out of the way, but I think they would love to get John Summerall in there right now, just with where the program is. So I think overall, you have a chance to get him. I think he does end up in the SEC. So your pick for John Summerall, Jordan, is as good as any right now. So I like some of these. I think right now we've kind of realized in this carousel that I think there's a lot of candidates that have not even entered the fray yet. Like I still find it funny the fact that none of us used James Franklin. I think I brought that up last week. I just think that when he was one of the first coaches ousted, he went on ESPN right after that when his PR move and basically pitched himself to everyone. Didn't convince any of us to put him on the hot board. So I think that's kind of fascinating. I want to see where he ends up when all is said. That if he doesn't go to any of these jobs, that's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, he's picking a year, the year that he gets fired. I mean, this is a good year to be in the cycle because of the good jobs that are coming open. If my dog does not push the podcast laptop over, he picked a good year to go into the coaching cycle and to be in the market. But we will see if he is able to land one of these top jobs. Because I think the thing is, it's going to be really hard to sell James Franklin. You want to sell him after he lost to UCLA and Northwestern in the same year. Like, you're going to have to, I think like a Virginia Tech is the kind of job he could take, and it makes sense. Before we turn the page from this, I'm going to leave this open to y'all, just see if y'all have an answer. I want y'all to predict the next head coaching job to come open in college football.
Really good.
I got one if y'all want me to get the ball.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to say Michigan State comes open. I don't think it's working with Jonathan Smith, who was an Oregon State guy. I think if he could do it over, he would have stayed West Coast, but Michigan State was a better job than Oregon State going into life not in the Pac-12 with the Pac-12 disintegrating. So I think Michigan State moves on from Jonathan Smith. That might even happen this weekend. I believe they play Penn State, a head coachless Penn State. So I want to say Jonathan Smith gets fired next. There's a few big jobs that I think could come open, but I'll say Michigan State is the next one. All right, either one of y'all jump in with your pick.
It's tough because the teams that I thought would make moves, like Florida State, can't figure out whether which way they're going to go. They said they're supporting Mike Norvell. We all thought Bill Belichick would be gone by now. His team is kind of hanging around there at this point. So I will say that maybe Dave Doran at NC State. That's a job where he's been there a while. He started out really strong, but that maybe they lose to Miami. They start heading the wrong direction. Maybe they don't finish strong there, and that job opens up. I think that's one where if they end up going the wrong way and they end up like 5-7 at the end of the year, he could be one of those first guys to go when it's I guess Black Monday or at the end of the regular season. I think we're kind of in the stretch right now where you might not see a change before the regular season ends. So him, and also I think at the same point Stanford, Frank Wright. I think he's a guy that's probably his seat's probably a little warm right now as well. So I think those are kind of the two guys that I think could be facing elimination at the end of the season.
Ben, what about you? You got to pick for the next job to open?
I know they just got a big win, so it's probably stupid to do this, but I just feel like Luke Fickell in Wisconsin's just not going to work out. I just don't see it working out. I know they just got a big win against Washington. It's hard to do that when you're Wisconsin, but if you were going to fire him or thinking about firing him before you beat a Washington team that was wildly overrated, I think it's irresponsible to put another year or 2 years into a guy because they beat that Washington team. So I don't know what their decision-making process was going to be beforehand. I know they'd come out and given a seal of approval or whatever it was, but I just feel like things will get ugly for them down the stretch after getting that win, and he'll eventually get fired.
I'm honestly shocked neither of y'all picked Florida State. I thought that would be the one.
Well, part of it is I think that they are going to fire Mike Norvell, but I think that they're going to fire Mike Norvell at the end of the season. And so I think someone else is going to get fired between now and the end of the season. So I was just trying to figure out like who I thought might get canned before the year actually wraps up, because I do think it's going that way for Norvell. I really do.
All right, going on to Georgia men's basketball minute, and we're changing things up. I'm going to give this to Ben Wolk, who pinch hit for me on Sunday. Tell us about Georgia and what they did against Morehead State.
Admittedly, really my first true look at this basketball team so far this year, and I was impressed with what I saw. I mean, they went from the week before or the game before only allowing 29 points and getting a win, and then they turned it around with a win where they scored 120 of their own. I mean, I know it was 120 to 81, so you might look up and say, oh, you gave up 81 points to Morehead State, but that part of it was, I think, just the nature of the game, and it was fast-paced, and things got a little bit sloppy late. Morehead State did rebound the basketball pretty well. I think they had 10 offensive rebounds in the first half that I want to say that were creating some second chance points that I know frustrated Mike White. But just from a talent standpoint, I was really impressed by what they did. I mean, the backcourt, I thought, got a lot of production in this one. I mean, Jeremiah Wilkinson came off of the bench and got 22 points. Justin Bailey was plus 18 at the end of the first half. Blue Cane did. I think Blue Cane's one of those players where you kind of know what you're going to get out of him on any given night. He's pretty reliable, and what he brings is what he's going to bring. And then you just want to have other guys that fill in well around that too. Cannon Catchings was someone that really got the game started off after going 0 for 17 to start the previous game. He hits 3 of his first 4 shots from long range. Georgia hits 3 of its first 4 shots from long range as well. And I think seeing those ones go in early made it a much more productive shooting night from beyond the arc. And Mike White really reiterated after the game that he feels that they have been shooting the ball better in practice settings and that he knows this team is more capable shooting the basketball than they showed in the early stages of the season. I couldn't talk about this game without bringing up Jake Wilkins. I mean, I think I had an outer body experience during that play because I couldn't believe what I'd witnessed. I mean, it was reaching the, full disclosure, it reached the point in the game where it was like, all right, we know which this thing's going. Let's wrap this thing up. Let's get Mike White and player interviews after the game. And then Jake Wilkins did that, and I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. And he did it right in that corner, right by the media corner as well, which was awesome because it was the perfect angle on it. But he is a special, special player. And Jeremiah Wilkinson and Justin Bailey met with reporters after the game, and they said, like, you're only beginning to see what's possible with this guy. Like, he's going to be on SportsCenter top 10 a lot. And I didn't see if he officially made SportsCenter top 10, but I imagine he did.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that, but I think there's a quiet confidence with this group as a whole, and they're off to a good start, 3-0. I'll say that 9 p.m. Eastern time on Friday night, Georgia Tech comes to town. Get the basketball version of Clean Old Fashioned Hate. I'll be there. I think it'll be a fun one, and I'll have a preview. We'll have a chance to talk to Mike White and a couple players on Wednesday. Get ready for that one.
I do have one issue with this team. There's like 4 playmakers on this team that are left-handed, and it's so many left-handed players on this roster that are making plays all the time. I couldn't help it. I was like, everywhere I look, someone's making a play, and he's a lefty, and it's all off to me.
Dozens of us.
Yes, I was going to say, as a fellow lefty, I appreciate.
I should have known. I was outnumbered here.
You always knew there was something about this podcast that you just couldn't stand. Well, on that note, we will end this podcast. I appreciate Kipp and Ben for popping on. Thanks to everyone who tuned in with us late on a Tuesday night. Thanks to everyone who's watching or listening to it after the fact. Go subscribe to Dawgs247.com. Fantastic time. We are in the middle of the coaching carousel mess. Could be some Georgia guys who wind up getting in the hunt. We're what, Ben? Less than a month away from National Signing Day?
Yep. I mean, at this point, less than. We'll obviously have an awesome recruiting show that day. I haven't even fully decided what we're going to do for that, but I'm looking forward to it either way.
Got basketball season underway. Baseball's been busy with scrimmages, and Olivia Sayers had a lot of intel from those. Great time to join us on the Junkyard. It's been fun, and potentially Georgia's getting ready for a playoff run, and we hope you guys will be on the site with us as we follow and cover that. Subscribe to the Junkyard Dawgcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review. That helps us a ton. Go subscribe to the YouTube Dawgs 24/7. Great player interviews. Kirby Smart press conferences on there. Mike White press conferences and player interviews there as well as all of our podcasts. You can watch them and see us if you want to do that as well. And go to our TikTok too. Got a lot of videos there as well. So we'll end the episode right there. For Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk, I'm Jordan Hill. Until next time, take care, everybody.